completing the square. So when we're completing the square, we're still using our quadratic function, ax squared plus bx plus c. There are 5 steps. For step 1 is if a is not equal to 1, then you're going to have to divide all terms by a to get it equal to 1. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Step 2 is going to be to write the quadratic as ax squared plus bx equals c. So we're going to move this constant that was originally equal to 0 to the right side of their equal sign. Step 3 is going to be to add b divided by 2 squared. So half of b squared to both sides. So now you're going to have x squared plus bx plus half of b squared is equal to c plus half of b squared. Remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. For step 4, it says to factor the left side into a perfect square. So your perfect square is going to follow this pattern. X plus half of b, all inside of parentheses, and then that raised to the second power, is equal to c plus half of b squared. Then you're going to square root both sides of the equation and solve for x. So for these first 3 examples, all that we're doing is solving for that completed square, that c value. So the rule is to do half of b and then square your answer. So if I'm looking at 18 divided by 2 is going to give me 9, and then squared is going to give me 81. So when I fill in this 81, I've now created a perfect quadratic formula because I can factor it into perfect squares, and those squares are going to be x plus 9 and x plus 9. This is the same thing as saying x plus 9 squared. For example 2, I have s squared minus 8s plus something. It's always going to be a plus because when you square things, it always comes out positive. So I have negative 8 that I'm dividing by 2, which is going to give me a negative 4. When I square negative 4, I get a positive 16. So again, this is going to be written as 2 perfect factors. I have s minus 4 and s minus 4, which is the same thing as s minus 4 squared. For my third example, I have a squared minus 20a plus something. Again, half of my b is going to give me negative 10. Negative 10 squared is going to give me positive 100. So when I go to factor this, I have a minus 10 and a minus 10. So that's going to give me my a minus 10 squared. For examples 4, 5, and 6, we're actually going to solve for the variable that they're asking for. So if we look at example 4, the first step was if a was anything other than 1, we needed to divide it. Since it's not, it's going to stay the same. Step 2 says to move your c value to the other side. So I'm going to have t squared plus 2t is equal to a positive 3, because I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Then it says to add half of b squared to both sides. So if I have 2 divided by 2, that's going to give me 1, and 1 squared is also going to equal 1. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So now I have t squared plus 2t plus 1 is going to equal 3 plus 1. When I simplify, I get t squared plus 2t plus 1 is going to equal 4. Step 4 says to factor the left side into perfect squares. So when I factor this, my perfect squares are t plus 1 and t plus 1, which gives me t plus 1 squared, and that's going to equal 4. Step 5 says to square root both sides and solve for x. So the opposite of squaring a number is square rooting. So when I square root this left side, I'm left with t plus 1. When I square root my 4, I'm left with 2. And then I need to get t by itself, so I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get t is equal to 1. For example 5, so I had an a that was not equal, or I had an a that was equal to 1, so I didn't need to do anything. My c is already moved over, so we can skip number 2. So we're moving right into step 3, which is half of b squared. So half of b is going to give me 3, and squared will give me 9. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides starting off. So I have d squared plus 6d plus 9 is going to equal negative 5 plus 9. When I simplify this piece, I get d squared plus 6d plus 9 is going to equal a positive 4. So now I'm going to rewrite my left side as a perfect square. So I'm going to have d plus 3 and d plus 3. So that's going to give me my d plus 3 squared is equal to 4. Step 5 said to square root both sides. So when I square root both sides, I get d plus 3 is equal to 2. So then I would subtract 3 from both sides. So I get d is equal to negative 1. And for my last example, example 6, I have x squared plus 12x plus 32 is equal to 0. So I need to move my 32 over. So I get x squared plus 12x is equal to negative 32. Step 3 said to do half of b squared. So half of 12 is 6. And 6 squared is going to equal 36. So I'm going to add 36 to both sides. So I get x squared plus 12x is equal, plus 36 is equal to negative 32 plus 36. So when I simplify, I get x squared plus 12x plus 36 is going to equal 4. So now I'm going to factor my left side, which is going to give me x plus 6 and x plus 6, which will be your x plus 6 squared, and that's all going to equal 4. The fifth step is to square root both sides, so I get x plus 6 is equal to 2, and then when I subtract 6 to solve for x, I get x is equal to a negative 4. The easy way of doing it is make sure that you have all of the steps written out and then follow them step by step as you work through your problems.